I'm Sean from Voices of Defiance, a podcast member of the Gunna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other podcasts at GunnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready, because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Crimson Comet, a fan podcast about the TV show dedicated to the Scarlet Speedster himself, CW's The Flash. Welcome to Episode 2 of Crimson Comet. This week we'll be discussing The Flash Season 1, Episode 2, Fastest Man Alive. I'm your host, Haley, aka Awesome Engineering Girl.
I'm John, aka Lobster.
And I'm Will, aka Rum Daddy.
If you want to get in contact with us and leave us some feedback, you can visit our website, crimsoncometpodcast.com, which is still not ready, but it will be.
Just watch this space.
Just keep refreshing the page. You can find us on Twitter at Crimson Podcasts, on our Facebook page, Crimson Comet Podcast, or you can call our voicemail line, 423-FLASH-53. That's 423-352-7453.
I swear I'm going to come up with a jingle for that number like I did last time.
And our listener, Adam, actually called our voicemail line, so let's go ahead and listen to his message now.
Hey guys, this is Adam with some feedback on the first episode of The Flash. I don't want Harrison Wells to end up being Professor Zoom, because that would be a little too similar to what they did with Deathstroke on Arrow. It's not to say I want him to be a good guy. My theory is just that he went back in time to try to change things so that Flash survived the crisis, but that potentially he caused the particle accelerator explosion to avoid leaving everything to chance, and so there would be some conflict there without him necessarily being a completely bad guy. Can't wait to hear what you guys think. Bye.
I have a hard time seeing Ed from Stucky Bowl being the bad guy. But after tonight, I don't know. Although he seems to be acting with Barry's best interests in mind.
So far.
But he's still one bad mother.
See, I don't know if he's, trying to do something good, be a good guy, or if he's trying to protect a certain timeline.
Either that or he needs Barry alive so he can use him somehow.
That's what I was thinking, that he was manipulating everything so that everything works out in his favor, obviously. But the whole faking of being in the wheelchair, still, I don't understand that. But
for like 3 seconds while I was watching the last episode, I was like, there's enough of a resemblance between Tom Cavanaugh, and whoever's playing the Flash, whose name I don't remember, Grant
Gustin.
Maybe they're playing him as like an older version of the Flash who traveled back in time, but then I was like, no, that would be silly.
And then that's what's going to happen.
I mean, there are descendants of the Flash that have similar powers, I think. That's a thing in the comics, too.
See, that would make more sense.
Yeah. So, maybe. So, do we think he's from the future?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think there was ever really a Harrison Wells in the present, or was he always...
Well, then, what I kind of started thinking is maybe it's one of those things where, you can't physically travel in time, but your consciousness can go back in time.
Oh, like in X-Men, Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Now you guys are just blowing my mind. There's
What?
a little, dust poof coming out of my ear right now. Poof.
It's the Flash running through your head. Whoosh. The red streak.
Yellow streak. It's a gold streak.
Not a brown streak.
No, that would be bad.
That would be very bad.
He almost had a little bit of that. He just wasn't eating enough.
I've had days like that.
I called that one, too. I was like, dude, he's working out a lot and he's not eating enough.
That's straight out of the comics, too. He has to eat to keep up his metabolism.
Have a banana. Eat a burger. Well, he's skinny enough.
He needs the Cisco Power Bar. That's
well,
what
we
he
know
needs.
for sure that in this episode he had his 40 IV bags, 3 dozen donuts, 8 plates of something from the cafe, and 3 pizzas.
What a way to live.
Anchovy, pepperoni, jalapeno something pizzas, right?
You do not want to be behind that Flash.
No. Talk about an afterburner.
Oh, that's why I think that's fire.
Talk about crop dusting.
But it's a very airtight suit, so he might just be doing, suffocating himself. So
Yeah.
You don't want to have to do his laundry.
Oh, God, no.
Well, he's got blood on him. He's got whatever else stuck to him. Who knows? Although at that point, maybe it's just like lighting a match. It just burns up going that speed.
Oh, that's awful.
Well, we heard from some of our other listeners through our Twitter account, which you can find at Crimson Podcast.
Let me tell you, if episode 2 and we have other listeners, I could not be more thrilled.
Yeah, we love you guys. All 4 of you. You're great. Great.
Thanks, Mom.
My mom hasn't even listened to it yet. At Gray Flannel Suit was asking if he needed to watch Arrow to get the references in The Flash, and we told him not necessarily at this point. And he said thanks because he was only halfway through Arrow and he wants to start Flash, which go for it because season 1 of Arrow is kind of rough and Flash is getting off to a pretty solid start.
Right.
And, spoiler, he meets him in Arrow in 2 episodes. Done. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I think when we get to the point of the crossover, you might want to be caught up because I think it's going to overlap. So maybe by that point, which is still several weeks away, you might want to be caught up then. But I think if you just want to check out Flash, even if you don't want to watch Arrow at all, I don't think there's going to be too much overlap.
No, at this point, I mean, there was a cameo appearance in the pilot, but you didn't need to really know anything about Arrow to get that.
It was just both of them saying, "Oh, aren't you cool?
You're so
That was
cool.
it.
You do a cool thing, man."
No, you're the cool one.
No, you are."
No, you are.
The prison in Arrow and Flash is Iron Heights. The jail that Flash's father is locked up in is Iron Heights, so that's one point of crossover. They mention that in Arrow a lot. And they've done like Big Belly Burger. You've seen like ads for it on Flash. It's a place in Starling City. So they're doing little nods. Obviously, it's the same producers and show creators. So there's going to be some play back and forth, which is kind of fun.
Thank God they're doing back and forth between these two as opposed to like Gotham where everybody still has standard definition TV sets that are 4x3 tubes. At least in Flash and Arrow, they're like, oh, high def flat screens. Okay, I'm good with that.
Right. So it seems like Arrow and Flash are creating a shared universe. Unlike what the DC films are doing. They're not sharing with TV.
They're selfish.
They're taking their ball and they're going home.
We'll talk about that in a second. Did we hear from any other listeners?
Yeah, Andy was live tweeting the episode and he was mentioning us in those tweets. A few of the highlights, he really liked the 850 tacos line, which, yes, that was fantastic.
Unless you add cheese and guac. That's a whole nother equation.
I know. Math is hard, guys.
It's hard
and then
for
he
me.
really liked the scene at the end between Joe and Barry, which was also fantastic.
Jesse L. Martin brings it in this episode.
He does.
Such great casting.
Definitely. And then Lil Too Clinical said that he teared up when John Wesley's ship walked in at the beginning. And I think he might have been talking about the pilot.
Because that's the first Flash.
Yeah. Which,
the first TV Flash.
if I had seen the first Flash, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what we heard from all of our listeners.
It's always good to hear that other people are watching the show and listening along.
Yeah.
It makes us feel more like a community.
Yeah. It's not
Like
like
we're
we're
loved.
just talking into the void.
So we're on Twitter. We're at Crimson Podcast. I'm
Yeah.
on Twitter. You're on Twitter. Will's not on Twitter.
I got to get into the tweet verse.
Will doesn't do this whole newfangled internet thing.
I do the whole newfangled internet thing. It's a whole Twitter thing that just is so time consuming that I'm just like, I have other things to do. Like check my Facebook page.
But we're on Facebook too.
Yay! See, that stuff I read.
Crimson Comet Podcast.
And it's pretty.
Yep. We've got our awesome podcast art, courtesy of John Lobster.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So we had a few listeners, but Flash had a few viewers. This episode got 4.27 million viewers.
That's a lot of people.
It's pretty good.
That's a lot
it's
of
pretty
cabbage.
good for the C-dubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Especially, for a second episode. Because I could see the first episode, everybody tuning in to see what's going on. But the second episode means that they've come back to see how the story develops.
Right. And they've retained most of their audience because the first episode had 4.5 million viewers.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really hard to do.
And I think when they added up the live +7 numbers for the pilot, it was the most watched premiere in the history of the CW.
I think even without those, it was.
Yeah, I think it was up there next to like Vampire Diaries.
Or yeah. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. It was like the highest in 5 years or something.
I think they got to adjust that up with the delayed
With the +3
viewing.
and the +7s, yeah. The +3s and the +7s mean a lot for viewership, but they mean crap
Nothing for
to...
nothing for Nielsen, but
Yeah. They don't mean anything to sponsors because they know that everyone's going to zip past all the commercials.
Well, actually, I mean, you can watch on Hulu Plus, and if you only have the free Hulu account, you can't watch until like a week after it airs. You have to have the paid Hulu Plus account to watch right away. So they're getting revenue from that too.
So are they doing the 8-day delays with everything on Hulu?
At least the CW shows are. CW has a really good partnership with Hulu where you can watch most of their shows, but unless you're paying for the Hulu Plus account, you can't watch it until, I think, a week and a day after it airs.
Yeah. Like I pay for my Hulu Plus, and everything is attached at midnight will go up at midnight, exactly right after the day it airs.
Yep. So that's a good way to get caught up on The Flash if you're interested.
And I also have noticed, because I've been watching a lot of premieres on Hulu this week, that they're limiting the amount of commercials extremely. Like they'll stop for like 1 or 2 commercials, and then where there's normal commercial breaks between the acts, it just keeps going.
Yep.
So I think for premiere week, to get you hooked or whatever, they're just skipping a lot of the commercial breaks and going right through it. Because I've noticed that for at least 3 of the shows that I watch on Hulu.
It's a good way to watch. I like it.
Because what I always found annoying about the Hulu ads is they replay the same one for every single break in the show. And it's like, dude, I get it.
I was watching some today and they kept showing the commercial for the new Nicholas Sparks movie.
Oh, you gonna go see it?
Totally. I was like, no, just stop. And I don't know how they have like 3 different ads for it, but they just kept playing them.
They have 3 different ads? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, like 3 distinct ads.
They kept playing that same Underworld ad before the Battlestar Galactica minisodes that one year. Oh, we can be slaves or we can be Lycans.
Whatever.
I saw that ad like 30 times.
And I didn't see the movie.
There's always the same Subaru ad. Oh, I'm going to buy a Subaru now.
I feel like The Flash is a good car. Yeah, like they could attach some car commercials to The Flash and do okay. That's a good demographic for it.
Yeah, but if it's like, Ferrari or Lamborghini or even a Mustang would be good. Any car that goes fast, fast, fast.
Or you could do it like with the minivans and be like, it's cool too.
Minivans are never cool. I don't care how many balloons you put in them. They're never cool.
All right, well, we got a little bit of news this week. They've released a few set photos of the Reverse Flash fighting the Flash.
That's the mustard to the ketchup, right?
Yes. And his suit in the images that we see is black and yellow, so you got a lot of black.
McDonald's.
What?
It looks like a big fight at McDonald's.
I actually really like the Reverse Flash suit almost more than... do you guys feel like this is a prototype suit? Are we going to see upgrades as the show goes on, or do you think they'll stick with this design for the Flash?
I think probably for this season it's going to stay the same, and then they'll do something at the beginning of next season to change it.
Because they've shown that they're willing to change the Arrow outfit, and they added the mask, and they've made some changes. I've seen photos of a sleeveless version floating around, which is pretty cool.
Well, the difference between that I feel like in the Arrow, they're slowly going more towards the comic book.
Right.
Slowly going in that direction. And you're pretty close to the comic book already with Flash, but they'll probably just, give it upgrades, like maybe make little lightning bolts a little smaller or bigger or whatever, and maybe change the mask a little bit so he doesn't look so much like the evil character from Farscape. Scorpio, so he doesn't look so much like Scorpio. But the Reverse Flash is cool because it kind of gradiates from yellow to black.
Yeah, and this is just like a shot from somewhere on set. This isn't with the proper lighting or effects or anything.
Yeah, but black is still black.
Well, yes, black is black, but I think it's going to look even cooler once they do all that stuff to it.
Yeah. Although it looks like it's put together with like a rivet gun in places where it was falling apart. And they were like, and some seamstress came up and I go, I can't sew it. There, that's good. Keep going.
It's got little lightning bolts on the belt. That's cool. The Arrow goes the opposite way.
Well, yeah, because he's the reverse.
He's the Reverse Flash.
Okay, so we've also got a little bit of casting news for the Flash. Victor Garber is going to play a recurring character as Dr. Martin Stein.
Garber.
I would see anything he does. I would listen to him read out of a phone book. I think he's fantastic.
I think the first thing I ever saw him in was Titanic, and everything I've seen him in since then has been awesome.
Legally Blonde.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
As Creepy Professor.
Yeah. Alias.
I think you're right about Titanic because I always picture him looking at his watch as the ship's like starting to tilt.
I always picture him in like formal wear.
Yeah, exactly. But he was also in I can't remember.
He's
What's
that
her
guy
name?
from that thing. You've just kind of seen him in everything.
Oh God! It was it was on at the same time as X-Files. She was a spy.
Alias.
Thank you.
With Bradley Cooper.
Was Bradley Cooper an Alias?
No.
No.
Oh yes, he was. Yes, he was. He was in the first
no,
season.
Yeah, he was. Victor Garber was in Argo. He was the Canadian ambassador.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Whose house they hide out at in Iran.
That was a great movie.
He's just good in everything. So I want to see more Victor Garber. Are they going to give him superpowers?
It doesn't say. They say he's not going to play a villain exactly, but he might be a little bit of an antagonist to the team for a little while.
I really hope they start to develop. I mean, the pilot was called City of Heroes, right?
Right.
So if they start to develop, like, there's not just the Flash, but there's other, like, heroes out there or people with abilities who are kind of, like, figuring them out, and maybe they start doing good stuff, too. I don't want to see, like, Justice League, but just if there's other players running around. Maybe you don't see them every week, but not everybody's bad.
Right, because, you know, if just a random smattering of people get superpowers, they're not all going to be bad guys.
Right.
I mean, what are the odds? I would be robbing banks, but that's me.
Unless they already have a grudge because of their dying wife, then yeah.
Right. I mean, you just can't help that.
Well, they've already spent the dying wife trope right off the bat, so I hope they don't revisit that.
Well, Victor Garber's wife died.
Ugh.
Or no, he sacrificed his marriage, so maybe she just divorced him. Completely different.
Well, then he can go after her. She's the one to blame. I have a question to ask about the show, and I'm wondering if the beginning of every episode now, he's going to break the fourth wall.
That's from the comics. And again, that's from the way the comics are structured. There's always kind of a voiceover where he introduces himself, and you kind of, in the comics, you kind of hear his thought process, and it would be like word bubbles. But I like it.
I do too. It's different. I like anything that just turns it on its side and makes it different.
Yeah, because you're expecting it to start the way Arrow does, where he's like, I am this person, and this is exactly what I'm doing. And he's like, hey, you know that stuff.
I was trapped on an island for 5 years, and now I'm
but that's standard. That's a standard television. I'm going to catch you up. You know, this is last time on, previously on. This is how I'm going to catch you up. But to have him break the fourth wall and say things like, but you already know that, and you saw that, whatever, you know. I thought that was great.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. It stays.
It helps the show with the lighter tone, which I think, again, we talked about last week, like this is a way that it's going to stand apart from Arrow and Gotham and Constantine and the other and The Walking Dead and the other comic book shows that are on TV. It's going to be fun. It's just going to be fun. And even this episode, there was some kind of gruesome stuff, like seeing him split into multiple parts, and when his hand came out of his hand, I was thoroughly creeped out by that. But
that was kind of cool.
I just think it's the way that the show was able to still keep it fun and put the heart in there. And yeah, you kind of get the tear-jerking scene at the end with Joe, and it all worked.
I had a problem with that because I thought it was written in such a cheesy, corny cliche that my eyes just rolled.
Well, the whole, like, you're not my father is totally a cliche.
You're not my real dad.
But then he breaks it down, and he was like, well, you're not my real father, but you did everything that a real father does, and you know that's
it was just written in pure cliche. It was just so cliche written. Just like when he said to his team, "When I'm out there, it's not just me; it's all of us together." I'm like, really? Now we're gonna go and play a football game.
Go team.
Yeah,
it's like the lightning bolt struck all of us. Yeah, that one I was like, except for like the guy in the wheelchair and the girl whose husband died and all that. Like maybe you don't want to like make that comparison.
Yeah, may not be a good
Cisco
idea.
was like, yeah, it did.
Okay, can we talk about his T-shirt?
Which
his
T-shirt?
That T-shirt that was Dr. Space and Time outline.
Okay.
Cisco or whatever.
Yeah. I feel like his T-shirts we're gonna have to watch and look them up.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure he was wearing his Mr. Space and Time guy from Community.
Oh, like Dr. Spacetime?
Yeah, Dr.
Professor
Spacetime. Professor Spacetime.
Inspector, yeah, it's just Inspector.
Inspector, yeah. It's not Doctor Who, it's Inspector Spacetime. Because he had a bowler, and it was an outline, he had a bowler and an umbrella, and then it was like the universe and everything behind him. And I'm like, that's from Community. I thought, Haley, because you're on Gallifrey Public Radio, that you would you would have been the first one to have noticed that.
I wasn't watching his shirts that closely. I will in the future.
It did look kind of like a Doctor Who type thing.
Yeah.
So I'll give it that.
I thought it was kind of funny.
And again, last week he had the rock, paper, scissors, lizard Spock.
Yeah, it's going to turn into a thing. We're going to have to watch his T-shirts and comment on it every week.
Yeah. Which, again, is another way they can kind of break the fourth wall, and it's fun.
And it's fun. And he embodies the nerd and geek in all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he's definitely going to be the audience member in the show.
Well, just naming the villain Multiplex, which is his
I'll
name
come
from
up
the
with something
comics.
better later.
Yeah, like that's cool. Like, and this show, Arrow, they kind of shied away with giving people code names. This show, they're going to embrace it. I like it.
Well, they gave our hero goofy, funky uniform right off the bat, a costume immediately.
Yep.
So, and they justified it by the material that it's made out of, but he put little lightning bolts on it and made it really cool, and a mask and.
Well, the ones on the mask are probably like antennas or something. They're critical to the functioning of the suit, obviously.
Yep,
you can
they
justify
are
anything.
Little earpieces. Okay, we have to talk about one more news item before we really break down this episode, because I feel like this is kind of a big deal. DC Comics Films have announced their slate of upcoming projects, which includes a Flash movie on the big screen.
Yep,
but
coming in 2018.
2018, but it's not going to be this Flash. They're casting somebody else, and they're going to tie it in with the Justice League. But again, they're not bridging the movie and TV universes the way Marvel has done.
Right. Ezra Miller will be playing the Flash in this film, which I think we knew this already. I think they'd made an announcement this summer that the TV universe was going to be a completely separate entity from their film universe. And I still think it's not a great idea.
It's an idiotic idea because, okay, so 2018, the movie's going to be out. Let's assume that the Flash stays on the air. So it's going to be on the air another 4 years or 4 seasons by the time that movie comes out. And it's going to have a fan base. People are going to recognize Grant Gustin as the Flash. And then, oh, no, you're going to see a totally different Flash in this movie. I don't know. I think they're leaving money on the table.
I don't know if they've said if Arrow's going to be in their film universe or not. Green Arrow. I haven't seen it specifically mentioned, but he's going to be in season 6 at that point if it's still running.
Yeah. Which would be a perfect time to jump to film, I think. If you're going to do it, have the TV show lead up to that. And by the 6 or 7 season, when the show is getting ready to end, have it jump to the movies. That makes perfect sense because you've already built an audience.
Oh, for Christ's sakes. This Ezra Miller, born 1992. And I'm looking at his IMDb page, and he's really pretty as far as like, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for this, but he's got very soft features.
He doesn't have the chiseled comic book face.
No, he doesn't look like what I want my superheroes to look like. I mean,
well, he's going to be 4 years older by the time the movie comes out. But...
Isn't this really early for casting?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's going to appear in the Justice League.
That's right.
Batman, Superman, and but the standalone Flash movie will come later. But even so, and again, I think Grant Gustin, for what it's worth, doesn't necessarily have the superhero look, but he fits the role, right? Like,
I agree. I mean, I'm not so concerned about him because he does kind of fit the role, and I'm okay with him. But Ezra, I'm not okay with. I mean, ew. Ew. I mean, yeah, he's going to be 4 years older when the movie comes out, but that doesn't mean, I mean, when are they shooting the film? They're going to shoot the film.
Who knows?
They'll probably start shooting it next year, right? Like, let's say 2015. And he looks like, I'm going to get hate mail for this, but he looks like a 10-year-old girl.
He kind of does, yeah.
He really does. He's got very feminine features, and I know people are going to give me hate mail on that, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but that's how I see it. I'm sorry, that's how I feel. So anyway, he's not what I would picture the Flash. Anyway, a far cry from the Flash TV series of, what was it, the 80s and 90s?
Right.
Where he was
super muscular. Yeah. Super muscular. Well, his suit had muscles too, but I guess, you know.
Yeah, but that also didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, and the Flash traditionally has been a lean guy. He has a runner's build, and so he's not jacked. But I don't think necessarily that Grant Gustin is like the most macho looking guy. But to say, okay, so they're gonna cast someone less macho than him, I'm like, oh, are you sure? But
who is Boss Macho?
And they've made it clear that they're going to go with Barry Allen. So you're not just, there's been several different Flashes from the comics. So they're not just going to go with the Flash. They're going to go with the same Flash that we're seeing on screen right now.
See, this is where DC is falling short of Marvel, because they're going to come out with the Flash. So we're going to end up seeing his origin story again, though we've just had a TV series that has gone on.
Well, you guys are assuming that this film is actually going to get made and that the whole DC film universe isn't going to implode before then.
You mean the comic universe that is not Marvel?
No, I mean the movie universe.
Yeah, the movie universe that is not Marvel. Because DC's doing a great job with TV.
Right. Their TV shows are great.
Yeah.
Well,
the movies, not so much.
The two that are on the CW.
Yes, the ones that are connected.
Yeah. Gotham.
They're off to a good start.
And I'm on a Gotham podcast. It's off. It's on.
Yeah, it's a show that's on.
It got picked up for a full season. It got picked up for a full season, so we're going to keep doing Gotham Nightlines as long as it's on.
I'm not hating it yet. I'm not hating Gotham yet. I'm actually really enjoying it. I actually really love Jada Pinkett Smith. I hate to say it because I'm surprised that I actually like her.
I love the casting on the show. I just don't feel like the material is...
Right. It's not a show I'm going to be heartbroken about if I find out it gets canceled at this point.
Wow, harsh.
I mean, that's just at this point. Like, I'm going to keep watching it. I'm not going to be relieved it was canceled like Revolution, but I'm not going to be heartbroken about it.
I just hope it gets better because I like doing Gotham Nightline. I like the concept of the show, and I hope it stays on the air and gets better. I think that the first couple episodes are always rough for some shows.
It's definitely got potential.
Yeah, it's got the potential. It's got a great cast. The city looks amazing. They just need to figure stuff out a little bit better. Flash, though, out of the gate has been phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
It got off to a solid start at the race.
It hit the ground running.
Fantastic.
Okay. So, what were your favorite parts of this episode?
Well, we already mentioned the taco line. And anytime food was involved. I also enjoy that he's still late to everything because even though he has super speed, he still can't be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there.
As somebody who is chronically tardy to everything, I can empathize.
I'm going to be honest. I watched the show 2.5 times. The first time I got home from work and I'm like, I need to watch it. And I fell asleep halfway through. Literally, like I woke up the next day. And then the next day I sat and watched the whole thing. And then I watched it again last night. And even though I sat through it, it's still kind of a blur to me. It's still, there's not one moment that really...
Because he was moving so fast.
There's not one moment that really stands out in that episode. I loved the whole thing and I was enjoying it. I was going for the ride. But I would say maybe the atom splitting going into the different bodies that Multiplex was going through. The one thing that did bring to mind was at the end when Barry went up against all of them. I'm like, this is right out of Matrix.
Yeah, it's the Burly Brawl from Matrix Reloaded.
Did you see the one clone trip on his way up the stairs?
Yeah.
Yes! I thought that was him. I'm like, I thought he spotted him and he said, that's the Prime. And it wasn't.
I know, that's what I was thinking too. And it's just like, nope, the animators felt like putting a guy tripping in there.
Because, yeah, I mean, you have all those clones. They're not all coordinated.
They can't possibly be. But yeah, it was right out of the Matrix. I was waiting for him to get up on a metal pole and spin around and kick them all in the face.
So what happened to I don't know, what do you want to call him? The dummy one that they created in the lab?
I think he just went and teamed up with the other guys that were at that building.
But they shot him. So is he just like...
Oh.
Do they have just like a dead one sitting there in the lab?
No, what happened to all of the dummies? Because the floor was strewn with them.
I mean, I guess at a certain point they get resorbed.
Or they just go into dust.
But I don't know, because the Prime died. So
right, so are they just dummies now?
They're just like shells.
I wonder if they're just brain dead and now they've got this huge supply of fresh organs they can transplant into people.
That would be brilliant. But then you also transplant that DNA and then you create an army of people who could replicate themselves.
I mean, we know we haven't seen the last of this guy, right? Because even though he died, they can just clone him and bring him back. They already did it, you think?
Right.
Well, they said that the Prime is the one that controls everything, but I think you're right. I think they could have easily skipped that and just... The one that they killed, you're right, it's just a huge truck pile of organ donors. So.
Okay, so Joe has shot a meta in both episodes we've seen so far. Is that going to be a thing that keeps happening?
Well, I like that it's not the Flash killing the bad guy. That's something that they did in the first season of Arrow a lot, was they had Arrow kill the bad guy.
A lot of them.
And then you kind of feel like you're rooting for a killer. And I think if they can keep the Flash's hands clean a little bit, and if there is somebody that needs to get capped, like have a cop do it, or he, I guess, dies by his own hand or hands in this episode.
Well, yeah, it kind of goes back to what Oliver the Arrow said in the pilot episode of The Flash. You can be a symbol of hope in a way that I never could be.
Digging deep.
Yep.
One like episode back.
We've quite the back catalog to keep straight here.
Your brains work so much faster than mine. That's because,
lack
of course,
rum.
You know what? Absolutely. There's no rum sitting here. I'm old, I drink, I forget, and there's no rum sitting here. It's my secret power, you know?
It lubricates everything.
It does. It helps the wheels turn so much faster. It's just like, Barry needs to eat. Will needs rum.
Bring it up to share with the class.
Will's feeling a little down. Rum, stat.
Do we have a brand that we need to endorse?
Oh, as long as it's a good sipping rum and not just crappy rum, I'm good.
You don't like it when it burns so good? Or you do like it when it burns so good?
No, I don't like it when it burns so good. Like Bacardi White and other crappy stuff, that's all you mix.
I hate
that
white
stuff.
rum.
Give me some Black Seal, some Goslings. That's good stuff.
I'm more of a Pampero or Zacapa type of rum drinker. I turned Haley onto Zacapa when we were in Vegas.
I know. It was really good.
That was fun. We're like, let's go have another one. All right.
You heard it here first, guys.
Rum is good. That's what you heard.
Good.
That's the word.
What's the word?
Bird.
The bird is...
The word?
All right, so what was your least favorite part of this episode then? Will, you said some stuff was forgettable. Does anything stand out as particularly bad?
As particularly forgettable?
Yeah.
Well, if it was forgettable, then I can't
Some of the dialogue was really heavy-handed.
That was my complaint earlier, that the dialogue was really heavy-handed. That was very cliche at some point, and I was wincing at some of it.
Yeah, especially pretty much any time they were talking about Caitlin and her backstory.
Yeah, part of me feels like there's something more there.
Well, and we know they keep bringing it up because it's going to play into later parts of the season, but it's not being handled well.
Oh, what about this cop that's stooping his partner's daughter? This is not someone who I trust. This is someone who's going to be very bad later on.
You shouldn't. Officer Pretty Boy, Detective Pretty Boy is going to be trouble.
Officer Pretty Boy is just going to be, he's already coming across as a major douche. So he's going to be just big. He's going to end up being some bad supervillain later.
He kind of reminds me of Captain Hammer.
Well, he just wants to get to the second date where he gets to do the weird stuff.
Well, like he walks into the room, thanks, Barry.
And his fists are not his hammer.
Yeah, the whole for science thing with where she's like, I forget what she said exactly because, well, it was a little bit forgettable, but she's like, no, you have to stay in the lab where we can study you. And he's like, no, I want to go out and save people. I think that was the part where I was like, really, he can run 352 miles an hour. You're not going to keep him contained. You might as well just try to get the telemetry while he's running around.
Oh, yeah, and they built a treadmill for him.
They built a treadmill.
That would work? I'm like, really? And we're going to put all these boxes of popcorn behind you. A styrofoam
No, you see, they Cisco'd it. They explained that part.
Oh, that explains everything. I no longer have any questions. Thank you. That just makes everything so much clearer.
We Cisco'd it.
That's going to be the go-to for everything.
Well, speaking of bad science, how about when Barry's just walking all over that crime scene he's looking at?
Well, no, he was.
Oh, yeah.
checking out the footprints.
I know, and he's like walking all over the
Stepping on the
footprints he's looking at.
Well, they brought back the Sherlock Holmes thing, which
Right.
that I kind of liked.
But if they're the exact same prints of the exact same person, how could he tell there were 6 sets of them?
Because they crossed. Because did you see how he was moving around like it was a twister board?
Right, but
He
how
was
do you know the
checking
guy
out
just didn't walk around for a while?
Because I don't know. They just
Just
he
say you
just
don't.
milled about for a bit.
He just hung out, had a smoke, grabbed some chips. Did you also notice that he showed up? Well, there's a couple things. He showed up. They're like, oh, yeah, he forgot clothes. So now we're expected to believe that Barry went in, stole a bunch of clothes, because you know he's not going to go into a clothing store dressed as the Flash, buy clothes, and change in the changing room. He's just
Well,
going
he went so fast they didn't
Yeah,
see
I
him.
think he dropped money somewhere.
Yeah, he put money in the drawer.
And then the other thing is this guy that could split himself up, and it's all about the DNA. He has DNA in his clothes, so he can duplicate the amount of clothes and shoes that each.
I know he can
his
duplicate the
wears.
clothes, but he had to steal guns.
It's unstable molecules, guys. Unstable molecules. Oh no, that's a Marvel thing.
Right. That's Fantastic Four things. That and asbestos.
Unless that was the outfit he was wearing when the reactor blew, and he just happened to steal a box of ski masks. That's the only thing I could think of. If he was wearing that outfit when it happened, then maybe that would be affected too, but who knows?
Maybe. I'll allow it this time.
Am I the only person who watches superhero movies and TV shows and they use their powers to do whatever? And I'm always thinking like, so your clothes have that ability as well?
Right.
Like when they turn invisible, suddenly their clothes become invisible
Well,
too.
no, in Marvel, for the Fantastic Four, they did explain. Mr. Fantastic came up with uniforms that had unstable molecules that changed with their bodies.
Right.
Because science.
Because science.
I mean, at least they make a token attempt to explain it in terms of like the Flash's suit. And we did see again in this episode he was running in street clothes and they started sparking. So I think they're going to stick with that. What did you guys think of the scene where he tells Iris exactly how he feels, but he does it super fast so she can't even register it?
A little annoying.
Very
A
CW.
little, very CW. Very, we have to keep the love triangle going. We have to keep the young girls wanting more and going,
Right.
oh my God, he's so cute. When are they going to kiss? But it was also very Lifetime.
I feel like it was more for the audience because I guess if you didn't watch the pilot, maybe you didn't get that.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple scenes where I felt like they were resetting things for people that didn't see the pilot but saw this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
And that was one of them.
Do you think they're going to stick with little kid flashbacks?
I think so.
I hope not.
I think we're going to see at least a couple more of them.
With Arrow, it makes sense. They've done concurrent storylines on Arrow the entire time, and you find out more about what happened. And
Well, Arrow tells stories. Arrow, and I don't know if I talked about it on this podcast or another podcast somewhere before, but I call it the Lost effect.
yeah,
Where you want to tell the storyline, you want to tell how they got here, and you do it concurrently by doing flashbacks throughout the. So you're telling two stories at the same time, but you're understanding how the current story unfolds due to how the background story unfolds.
Right.
So Arrow does that really well. And the first time I remember seeing it happen on a regular basis was on Lost. And now there's a couple shows who use the same. Once
Yeah.
Upon a Time does the exact same thing. Once Upon a Time will tell a concurrent story, and then throughout the whole episode, they'll flash back to show you how that character developed into what's going on to this story.
I feel like for this show, they're probably going to be doing it like to flashback to the crime that was committed, which they might not even be doing new flashbacks. They might just keep going back to that one and showing different details of it as he figures things out.
Yeah, this is different. This isn't the same thing as Arrow or Lost. This is where you're following one character. This is he's still trying to solve the crime of his mother getting killed. So it's like one long Sherlock episode. It's just, and I think that's what he keeps flashing back to while we keep going back to the board with all the pictures and arrows and everything.
yeah. I think if they can bring in more details about the crime, that would be interesting. But I feel like we know enough about his character that we don't need to have that backstory filled in as much. I think if they could do some flashbacks to the time that he was in the coma and see what some of the other characters were going through, That would be interesting because
I agree.
I bet we will get one episode where they do that.
We did skip 9 months in these people's lives, and Iris started dating Pretty Boy Cop, and Professor Wells was in the wheelchair and kind of had to deal with that, and he was gathering his team, and they were doing experiments on Barry while he was in the coma, and, if they could fill some of that in, I think that would be interesting.
Well, and we're also probably going to get flashbacks or flash forwards to what Wells is doing.
Yeah. I don't want him to give too much away because I like the suspense, but I think that could definitely play a factor.
He's in a wheelchair. He's out of a wheelchair. He's in a wheelchair. He's out of a wheelchair.
He's got a secret future room where he can read the newspaper.
This episode did confirm that he was just faking it for the wheelchair.
Yeah. He can walk whenever he wants to.
Whenever he needs to commit a little homicide.
Whenever he has to kill President Ellis from the Marvel movies, he can walk.
I'm going to be interested to see the reveal of when he falls out of his chair and stands up and somebody walks into the room.
I don't know. I feel like they're going to save that for a while, but as an actor, I wonder if he's like, oh, come on, just get me out of the chair already.
Are you kidding? Well, he gets to sit around all day. Sounds great.
Well,
who is he, Artie on Glee?
Artie on Glee is one of the best dancers in the whole cast. And it drives him crazy that he has to sit in the chair the entire time. And they gave him one episode where he did that fantasy dance number in a mall. But in reality, he's a very accomplished dancer and can do all sorts of things. So as an actor, it must drive him nuts.
But I think we're going to see him walking around every episode anyways.
I think they probably told him when he took the part, they're like, okay, you're going to be in a wheelchair, but secretly you can walk. What actor doesn't want that job of like...
That's true.
You can walk, but you're pretending to be in the wheelchair.
I'm telling you, most actors would much rather play the bad guy than the hero.
Well, because it's more interesting.
So much more fun.
Way more fun.
And you could go completely overboard and still be believable.
So do you think he really is a villain, or is it something else?
I think they're going to paint him out to be a villain.
Yeah.
And then he's going to have redemption of saying why he did everything he did, and that's going to redeem him.
I don't necessarily really want it to be like he's the Flash's arch enemy, but he also created the Flash. Because he could have just let him die while he was in the coma or something, but he needs him for something. There's something where he needs the Flash to survive and to be the Flash. Like, who steered Cisco into developing the suit? Like, who was working on that technology? I don't want him to be like straight up the arch nemesis, but I want him to be at least a little bit selfish in why he's doing what he's doing.
See, I kind of feel like maybe he's got some grander purpose in mind, where maybe there's somebody else that came back at the same time he did to try and alter the timeline, and he's trying to preserve a specific timeline. So that's why he's got to protect the Flash until he reaches, the crisis or whatever.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to be painted as if he's a dangerous villain, but secretly he's actually the good guy.
So a lot of this episode was about people trusting Barry and Barry trusting people. Do you think that's going to be a theme going forward? Where, like, he's going to come to not trust him, but then he's going to realize that he has to trust him.
That's a theme in most comic book shows anyway.
Yeah.
It's all about trust, yeah.
Right. And I don't know if it's going to be Barry as much as Joe and Wells deciding whether or not they trust each other, because I don't think Joe is going to trust Wells.
No, absolutely. And there's no reason for him to.
Even if they didn't do the whole he might be somebody from the future angle, he's still the scientist who caused the explosion. And that's an interesting angle for the character too, is he doing something to redeem himself for that, or did he cause it deliberately to cause all of these metahumans to come into existence, or was it something that had nothing to do with the reactor and it was just a fixed event that he knew was going to happen, so he traveled back to that time to be there when it happened?
Or maybe there was something specific about this event occurring that made it possible to travel to that time.
That's what the explosion was. It was him going back. Who knows?
All this time talk. It's very confusing.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
All right, so 2 episodes in. We like the show, guys, right?
Right.
Absolutely. No, I hate the show. We're ending the podcast right now. Goodbye, everybody.
I think if we hated the show, it would definitely be a reason to keep doing the podcast.
It would be a different take on it.
It would be a different take on it.
It's kind of like when I would have my roundup parties or my viewing parties when we would watch Lost every week, and we'd sit there and bitch about it every week, and then we'd get together and watch it. The next.
We're gonna watch the next one. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, you're committed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you guys check out Arrow last week by any chance?
I have 15 minutes left of the episode.
Okay, then I can't say anything.
Yeah. Well, wait. Do you mean the first episode or the second episode?
The first episode.
Oh yeah, the first episode I saw.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't watched. I haven't watched this week's yet, but I like where it's headed.
It's much darker. I feel
it is much darker. There's still humor, and I think we've compared. At least I've been making the comparison to Arrow, and I've called Arrow a darker show, but there still is a fair amount of humor and definitely a lot of heart to that show. And certainly last week's, the season premiere, was a good example of that, because it had its lighter moments, it had its darker moments, and in the end it kind of balances out, although it ends definitely on a dark note.
And because of where it ends in the first episode, the second episode is pretty dark all the way through.
So I wonder if The Flash is going to follow some of that tone, because again, while I enjoy the lighter tone on The Flash, I think that they can do darker stories too.
Yeah, I think they're going to be doing both. You can't just have fun and popcorn all the time. Like, there's going to be darker elements to the show. There were certainly dark elements to this week's episode as well. I mean, I mentioned the suicide of Multiplex and the stabbing of William Sadler as dark moments in the episode.
Those were both pretty grim.
Certainly whatever the Flash does after he eats 800 tacos would be pretty dark as well.
Nothing any of us want to know about.
No.
He has a whole different sanitation company working for him.
So if he has to eat that fast, how does the digestion work? I don't know. I don't know if I want to think about it. I like that they're exploring the other implications of his powers besides running fast. I think that that's good.
That he could think fast and talk fast.
He can think fast, he can talk fast. He isn't much of a fighter yet, which the Flash...
No, you can tell.
Yeah.
He keeps getting overrun by all the clones who beat the hell out of him.
He just needs to fight smarter, not harder.
Right, and you're starting to see him already use his speed to enhance his fighting abilities. He just doesn't know what he's doing at all yet.
Right.
I mean, if your fist is moving that fast, you're going to do some damage.
Right.
Well, not just to the person you're hitting, but also to the bones in your hand. But
right, which is why they have to give him super healing powers too.
Right. Well, so many of these superheroes have super healing power because if they didn't, their bones would be crushed.
Right.
So they're basically all Wolverine.
I mean, he heals faster, but I don't think he can regenerate a whole arm or anything. Like if he
that
loses,
would just be silly.
Yeah. So he can heal from a broken bone and some scrapes and bruises, but he can't like regenerate anything unless he could regenerate the ability to walk.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Oh, another thing. So in the comics, Flash is able to extend his power to others, and we saw that in this episode where he was able to move people out of harm's way or, outside of a burning building without injuring them, where, like, if you were to move that fast, you would get whiplash and a concussion and die. Yeah. So he's able to, like, extend the envelope of his powers around others to protect them when they're moving at high speeds. So I like that they worked that in as well.
I was going to ask about that because I could see him moving a little girl, but I'm like, is he picking up adults and moving them that fast? I guess.
Yep.
He's using his momentum.
Yeah, they'd have no idea what's happening. They just, whoof.
He lifts with his legs.
Yes. Lightning gave him abs.
That's true. Lightning did give him abs. I want to get hit by lightning. I want abs like that.
Who doesn't?
So if you had the choice of eating 800 tacos or 3 anchovy, pepperoni, and hot pepper pizzas, which would you choose?
Tacos.
Tacos.
Yeah, I think I'd go with the tacos too and follow it up with the 3 dozen donuts.
Tacos rule.
Ooh. Dunkin' Donuts. Ooh.
He had at least 3 dozen donuts. That's all the boxes I saw.
Flash runs on Dunkin'. So one little Easter egg I noticed is the gun shop that Multiplex robs is called Hex's, which Jonah Hex is a DC Comics character. Also a terrible movie with Megan Fox in it. They did a movie version of
What a
that.
coincidence.
It was all right. It wasn't that bad, but it was pretty
Now, which
bad.
one was a really good Megan Fox movie? Yeah, see, that's what I thought.
There's this weird coincidence where they keep casting her in movies that turn out to be terrible.
I don't know how that happens. If you have to take this long to think about it, that says a lot. You're like, there's one. No, that wasn't it. No.
There's that one where. Oh no, she wasn't in that.
Yeah.
Oh, she was in. Oh, but that was terrible.
We also have Iris taking a journalism class, which apparently in the comics she's a reporter, and she's already looking into the red streak. So that's interesting. I like that they're giving her something to do because I like her character a lot.
Apparently, in comic books and TV shows, all the smart women are reporters. Like, there's a lot of things. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are professors, but there's always the one who's cracking the story is always some brilliant, no-holds-bar reporter, very Lois Lane, I'm not going to listen to my editor, I'm going to do what I want type of thing. I don't think I've met as many reporters in real life that exist in superhero comic movies. So,
well, I like that she wanted to take medieval English or something like that. And Barry talked her into taking the journalism class, which she didn't even really seem that interested in at first. But now she's got a story, so she's going to follow it.
There was a Cracked article where they talked about how nobody is really a reporter anymore and how it's not a good cover for the superheroes.
You know what would be a great cover? Food blogger.
Or TMZ paparazzi. I just happen to be there catching this photo.
Isn't that pretty much what Peter Parker's doing?
Yeah, that's pretty much what Peter Parker does is...
Yeah.
Professional video gamer.
IT specialist.
Yeah, you got to get in there and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, flashbacks. I wonder if we'll have any flash forwards.
I hope so. That'd be cool.
Too much Lost again.
Some flash sideways.
Flash sideways. Flash forwards. Flashbacks.
Barry's been dead this whole time.
That's why he could talk to us and we see clouds at the beginning of every single episode.
Oh, that is great foreshadowing.
Isn't it? He's talking to us from the grave, and then the camera's going through the clouds, and the clouds part, and that's because he's dead.
Yep.
He's dead, Jim.
He's dead somebody. He's dead Barry.
He's buried.
This has been Crimson Comet Episode 2. Join us next week as we discuss The Flash Season 1, Episode 3, Things You Can't Outrun. Until then, I'm Haley.
I'm Lobster.
I'm Rum Daddy.
Bye.
Whoosh.
So long.
Thanks for listening. If you want to leave us feedback, you can find all of our contact information at crimsoncometpodcast.com. Find us on Twitter at Crimson Podcast or Facebook at facebook.com/Crimson Comet Podcast. Leave us a voicemail at 423-FLASH53. That's 423-352-7453. The opinions heard on this podcast are those of the individual host and do not represent Gonna Geek. The podcast is not affiliated with DC Comics, Warner Brothers, or the CW. No infringement is intended. The music heard is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com.
John is stroking his beard and wondering when they're going to talk about The Flash.
We're not. That's not what the show is about.
We're not.